Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us, especially since there's a change of time for those states, which is almost all of them, that are on daylight savings time now. I sent out the meeting poll, I think 10 days ago, and we made the decision. I sent out the meeting invites, but then I've also sent them around again. So apologies for being spammed. The reason I did that was I got a number of queries asking for confirmations. So I just resent that to confirm and then posted on Zulip as well to say, no, this is the time. If this ends up being a real problem for a number of participants, we can reopen the decision on being on this time. Uh, but if it's working, we'll stay on this. And then at the end of daylight savings, which I think is about the 3rd or 4th of April, we'll do a poll coming into that again to see where we want to have our meeting times going forwards. Um, so I'm chairing today. We've got our scribe Shelley on the line, and we've got the speakers, so we are ready to go. All right, let's get into our AU Patient Summary FHIR IG call for the 17th of October. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country and that we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which we all gather today, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators, and healers. Here is our stacked agenda. So we've got usual business and updates. There's a lot of updates, and also Ruben is going to give us an update on the Pittsburgh meeting. By the way, all these slides are already on the meeting page today. So if you navigate to that page, and I think Shelley will drop a link to it in the chat, then you can grab a copy of these right now if you want. So we'll go through our usual business, then very quick ballot update. I'll try to cut that down. And then we've got ballot reconciliation, and there is quite a lot we want to go through today. There's the results of the block vote that was sent around. That's been approved now. One of those items was referred to telecom, so we're going to go through that today. There needs to be a confirmation for a particular technical correction and approach. So that's there, and you'll be asked to kind of vote on the process on how we want to handle this particular flavored item. Then we have for voting today, this ballot item on workflow, which is an informative section. We also have, ideally, we can get to at least no known procedures and no known immunizations. And then we need to walk through at least the no known medications and maybe just highlight this last one because they are for discussion at the IPS call. A number of these items were referred. So part of what we're going to need to do today is if it looks like we're getting stuck on an item, we might wrap up with some next steps and then move on to the next item. So I'll ask people to kind of keep that in mind as we're talking through things. Oh, and does anyone want to add anything to the agenda? All right. Next bit, usual business. Let's go through this. Approval of minutes. These have been sent round. They have the usual content through attendees. We've got all the slides and everything, transcript chat log. We've got all the decisions that we made. We got through all our ballot items. We've got the set of actions here. Does anyone need more time to review these? Okay, in that case, would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve, Doshi.
Thank you, Dushi. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Yep, happy to second.
Thanks, Stephen. I will now go to that poll for approval of the minutes. Okay, Please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. If you only have access to the chat, pop your +1, affirmative, negative, abstain in there. And if you can't see either of them, you can just call out your name and affirmative, negative, or abstain. I'm going to close that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll and share the results. With what we've got in the chat there's 18 affirmative, 0 negative, 3 abstain. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. Alrighty, let's go to the next item. So, exciting, IPS 2200 is published. That's now out and available. We've got the link here, but you can easily find it by going off the AU Patient Summary FHIR IG and clicking back onto our dependencies. I think the thing there, because it's recently published, is I think we still need to do a review to confirm full alignment with the final published specification. So can I ask, Dushika, are you okay to take an action on that?
Yes.
Fantastic. And then it would be, I think we want to have that done prior to the snapshot for the December Connectathon. So if we can add that into the minutes, and you can report back to this group when that's done and what, if any, changes have either been brought in or that we need to look at taking out. Next item, AU Base and AU Core reconciliation. So AU Base did approve moving body site and laterality guidance from core to base. That just repoints, I think, where we were referencing guidance. The next AU base items are up for discussion, but they don't impact AU patient summary. And AU core reconciliation is complete except for some common issues. They were looked at in yesterday's AU core technical design group. So I'm just going to mention them here, and I encourage you to consider whether or not you want to participate in this discussion, either by reviewing and commenting on the JIRAs or by coming to the meeting. And to find out what they are actually about, you can look at the recording of yesterday's AU Core TDG and go basically right to the end, because we went through them at the end. So both of these impact AU patient summary. This top one changes the diagnostic result observation profile. This bottom one down here changes some diagrams on the relationship to other IGs page. Next announcement, don't forget our IPS call, and I did send out meeting invites for that so that you've got that in your calendar if you wanted to attend, to talk about those referenced AU patient summary ballot items. Is the 29th of October. It's 7 a.m. I've got the link here. We'll ensure that link is in our minutes, but it's in our AU Firework Group calendar as well. So there is a new Zulip poll out. It's only been out, I think, just a few days. If you actually represent no known current medications using FHIR in your system, can you go and have a look at this poll and either fill out one of the options if that corresponds to you, or add in a new option? We're really trying to get an understanding of what is actually implemented now, or maybe what you're planning to implement if you haven't yet. Exciting news! The Connectathon tickets have been released. They were released, I think, yesterday. There's a QR code there to go to the Eventbrite page. There's a tiny URL here to go to the Eventbrite page. These things sell out fast. So if you had been intending to go and you were just waiting for this to be released, it's out now. All right, next bit. There's a new Zulip EOI, and this is related to the Connectathon. Brett or Dushi, would you like to just give a quick overview on what this is?
I can say a few words. So we ran this breakout in September at the Brisbane Connectathon, and it was very well attended. And we were lucky enough to have Graham Grieve there to answer questions and talk to us about some tooling changes that are coming. We'd like to run it again in December. So it's a session for anyone that's working on FHIR IGs. For example, if you're building your implementation guide on top of AU Patient Summary, any authoring on editing questions or build problems, working examples, you can bring to this session and we can work through it together or talk about it. So if you're interested in participating, you can simply react to this silly post, or you can add any suggested topics or offer to demonstrate any tooling or approaches. We'll keep this silly topic updated, and we'll circulate more details closer to the date, but we certainly hope to keep it going. As I said, from my opinion, the first breakout in September was really successful.
Any questions around the breakout? All right. Thanks, Shelley, for adding that so that people can go and express their interest. And also, as it comes into the Connectathon, I guess, if you're trying to author a FHIR IG and you just need more information or someone to walk you through how does this happen, maybe you're trying to uh, have your own local IG that implements AU Patient Summary. Post that question in this chat, and that will be one of the topics that would be walked through in the breakout. It's all meant to be supporting, people in Australia trying to work with FHIR IGs. Alrighty. Next one. Actions. Um, okay. On the first one, that I don't think is being picked up, and that's because we forgot to assign someone, which is looking at having an example of test data. Dushi, can I ask you to
I think that was assigned to me in the last meeting, and it's still ongoing.
okay. Can we then update in the minutes that this is assigned to Dushi? Next one is for Tim. Tim, are you on the line? No. Okay, we'll hold that over to another meeting. I had a action on me about the poll and then sending out meeting invites. That's happened. Heath, the next two are yours. Do you want to give a quick rundown?
Yes, so there was the poll. I believe that one was the medications one that you just alluded to. So that one's been done. And the second one is basically for a hot topic session at the TDG in November that's held in Canberra. I think it's on the 14th, off the top of my head, in November. So I'll be
13.
putting that out as a expression of interest effectively on topics that we would like to discuss. I got a few topics that are kind of ongoing list of hot topics, but I'm looking for anyone else that might have something that they've come across as part of their implementations to bring those along as well, please. So I'll do that shortly.
Okay. Thanks, Heath. Neil, were you asking something earlier? Sorry, I think we talked over the top of you.
No, I just couldn't see the screen. I had to leave the meeting and come back in. Technical.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, final call for tickets for the CDG TDG day. I think there were a couple left on CDG and about 15 to 20 left for the TDG day for the Canberra workshop. So final call really for people to get in, especially those who are going to be presenting and pitching some new content for AU Core R3. We've got quite a few community pitches in. which will be great. And then we've got to go through and look at whether or not we have more than we can fit in the space, and whether or not they're all actually for AU Core, or maybe sometimes they can also be actually about AU CDI. So we'll have a look at that and then get back to people. The deadline is Monday. So Monday next week, the 20th of October, is the deadline for submitting an EOI, which is just a one-pager to say, here's what I would like going into AU Core R3. Here's why, here's the impact, why now, and who's going to do the work. And okay, here's that slide. So repeat of that. I think I've talked about this a couple of times, so I'm not going to talk anymore unless there are any questions. Alrighty, let's go into this update from Ruben.
Thanks, Danielle, and hi, everyone. So owing to the really packed agenda today, I'm compressing this update to 5 minutes instead of 10. However, I delivered the same update at yesterday's AU Core meetings, and that I believe was recorded. So if you want more detail on the topics I don't speak to, please have a look for those minutes and that recording. Right, so in September, HL7 had its annual plenary working group meeting and FHIR Connectathon. It's notable that it was the first hybrid event with some sessions supporting virtual and web-enabled attendance. Experiences varied on that. The only other thing I want to flag on this slide is that there are significant leadership changes in HL7, with Dr. Chuck Jaffe stepping down as CEO at the end of the year, as well as Karen Van Hindrek, who's stepping down as HL7 Chief Operating Officer. The succession planning committee is now coordinating recruitment for those roles, which we hope to have filled by the end of the year or thereabouts. And additionally, new board members, international council chairs, and TSE members were announced as well. There are links to all of these things in the slide deck. Next slide, Danielle. What I really want to focus on, because this is the Australian Patient Summary meeting, is IPS. So the first thing is the International Council met for a full day meeting, and Graham did a presentation regarding IPS localization policy. The meeting minutes are quite detailed, and the essence of what he said was there is concern in the global community that because nations are developing their own patient summaries, some of which are well aligned with IPS, some not so much, there's concern that the IPS idea is being undermined. So Graham is calling for HL7 affiliates in the International Council to do some work in relation to their national patient summary FHIR IGs, and in particular to declare very clearly whether their patient summary is an actual proper profile of IPS, i.e. any instance of that national PS is a valid IPS instance. And secondly, to indicate what would happen if a non-national patient summary, which was IPS aligned, was being processed by local implementers. We're doing a lot of work on this, and in fact, there will be a session at the November TDG in Canberra, which Graham will be running, which will talk about this for ourselves for the Australian patient summary. So if anyone's there, I encourage you to please try and attend and participate in that session. Moving further down on International Patient Summary itself, as Danielle mentioned, version 2.0.0, it was not quite finalized in September. There were some last minute things and minor items to resolve. Subsequently, it is now published. There was a really good governance of IPS overview and listening session, which was run by Mike Nussbaum of the Joint Initiative Council, which is the committee of all the SDOs, just to discuss IPS governance and the role, if any, which the Global Digital Health Partnership should have in relation to that. Very good session, and the slide deck for that is available at the link. And excitingly, the Cross Projects Working Group created a project proposal to create an IPS-aligned USA FHIR implementation guide or patient summary implementation guide. That proposal has been accepted and will probably now progress to a formal project scope statement with work commencing on that. as I said yesterday, I think there'll be some lessons the cross-project group could get from ourselves, as they'll probably be trying to align not just to IPS, but also to US core, which is something I think we in Australia have done some really good pioneering work on. So that's what I really wanted to present. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them in whatever time I have left for this update.
Oops, I was on mute. Any questions for Ruben? All right, we'll keep you updated anyway. Let's go on to the next item, and Ruben's provided all those links. So in the slides that are already on the minutes, you can, if you're interested in any of those items, you can navigate from there to the links. I'm going to do ballot update. I'm going to go through this real quick. I'm going to skip past this. We all know we're in the middle of doing reconciliation. Here's where we're up to. We have made fantastic progress. So the triage is almost done. There's just one issue left from the AU Core co-chairs to come back to us on in these calls. In terms of making decisions, we've made decisions on 82% of our items. What's left is basically in this meeting today, and we'll need to go through those, and some of those will continue on into the next call. But yeah, we've made some pretty fantastic progress. In terms of also updating, the IG editors are on top of it. They've already got 11 of the issues we've made decisions on in, and that brings us to 37% are already applied. So we're looking really good to have a pretty complete snapshot for December Connectathon. Just reminder, this is what we're doing today. Ballot reconciliation. I'll go through the what's next at the end of this call. But you know, I've talked about all of these things just in a less pretty graphical form. Dispositions. Do not forget, please, what we're doing today. We make a decision on everything as we are going to be classifying with one of these things. Consider for future use means we're deferring it from this R1 release. Persuasive means, yeah, we're going to make a change and we agree with why. Persuasive with mod, we're actually proposing a change to what was suggested by the person who raised this. Not persuasive, we don't agree, no change will be made. Not persuasive with mod, we don't really agree with what was raised, but we're going to make a modification, usually a clarification to the IG to explain better what the IG is trying to say. Okay, block vote. We had a block vote which had a large number of editorial and informative items. That has passed. I'll just do a very quick run through of what that is. And thank you to everybody who participated and voted in that. A lot of these some were very minor editorial. Some of these are a little bit larger around changing some of the use case format. But most of these were much smaller, like 3 wording or 1 sentence changes. I won't go through all of them in detail. The dispositions and the items are here and we're out for vote. What we did have is one item referred to telecom. So Ricardo asked for that, and that is this example. Sorry, this JIRA. Which was originally raised by the agency on the addition of a patient summary example use case. And I've just got the comment here from Ricardo to request that this is pulled from the block vote because the agency would like to update the resolution description of the issue better to reflect the agency's direction in terms of adoption of AUPS. And they have provided the agency kind of position statement on that for us to consider. And so we're about to go into that one right here. Ricardo, did you want me to keep sharing a screen? Do you want to talk to this? How would you like to bring this through?
I think, anyway, I'll keep my background. It's probably not meant for this call, but anyway. Look, I'm happy for you to keep sharing your screen. Look, I'm not going to go also through this into too much detail. I think at a high level, what's in the JIRA issue as the proposed resolution description. Kind of aligns with where we want to take this, but in discussion with a broader group of stakeholders in the agency, there was a proposal to expand the resolution description a little bit more to try to align with what we're planning on doing a little bit more, which is what's proposed there on the right. I know, Danielle, we spoke about TDG's position on this versus the agency's position on this resolution description. So I don't know what the best way forward is. So maybe we could, where we currently have a proposed resolution description on that issue, maybe just simplify that and refer to the agency comment, or some other way you might advise us as the best way forward. So what we wanted to, I think, stress, maybe just coming back to this, is the kind of what we see as the importance of the My Health record in, for example, as one of the key pieces of our national infrastructure in supporting the Australian Patient Summary, but we also acknowledge that there's some work still to be done in that space. So yeah, I don't think the change is significant, but still, that's probably what we wanted to pursue as our position that we put forward.
So we'll go very shortly to Brett and Yoni. I'll make 2 points. I'll just click on the issue for those people who aren't aware of it. The agency submitted a suggestion that we enhance the AU Patient Summary IG by, oh, that's probably too tiny for people. Hang on. Okay, by including a example use case on connecting to the My Health record with copy 2 and so forth. Through discussion with the agency on whether or not they could provide the details of that now, the agency's provided that position statement back that they would be happy for this to be deferred on the understanding that at the time at which they can actually provide the outline and the detail, then that would be reopened for us to basically discuss. So that's the nature of the issue. The second point I will make is in terms of what you suggested, Ricardo, on updating the disposition and I guess taking this text as the agency position statement. Whoops, I went too far. Referring to that, whether that's totally in the text of the disposition or referring to directly to the comment, would be an acceptable way to refer to the agency's position. And now we'll go to Brett first, then Yoni, then Dushi.
Yeah, I think it's more I think it's just more the methodology and tone we use for making dispositions, because usually we just put the disposition, the rationale for the disposition, and what the plan is going forward, whether that's a change or no change. So I kind of think some of this material would maybe end up in the content, and I think also referring to it, it's in the comments as well on the ticket as a standing position for the agency as well. So I think it's kind of covered. So it's for me, it's more just normally we use much more neutral language. Let's say we just really talk about what the request was and what the actions will be. So yeah, that was my thoughts.
Thank you, Brett. So to confirm, you would also be happy with a reference in the disposition to the agency statement?
Yeah, I think that would be fine, and yeah, and I think too that will change over time, and there might be more to say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Yoni.
Sorry, Danielle. Thank you. I just want a clarification on what is exactly that we asked to vote on. Obviously, the agency position is the agency position. The infrastructure is the infrastructure. We will do everything in our part to help them. And I think everyone understands and agrees that the patient summary is integral here in the whole My Health Records, electronic health records concept. So I don't think there is any disputes, but I'm also confused as to what exactly are we asked to vote on per se, and how should we vote in that context?
So we're being asked to vote on So the agency has put forward a suggestion that we include in our patient summary a use case on how you share with the My Health record. The proposed disposition is consider for future use, which is to say that we're not rejecting this. We don't think this is a bad idea, but on the advice from the agency that they can't provide the detail now, we're proposing to defer actually going through what does that example entail until the agency can provide that material. So that's what we're being asked to vote on. If, however, you believe that we shouldn't be including an example on how do you connect with the My Health record with a patient summary, that would be a change to the disposition to say something like not persuasive. Did that answer the question?
I think it did. I think it's a little bit of a challenging statement because it depends on who has the infrastructure to do what and when. Obviously, in the interest of time and progression, I think my question is who is positioned best to progress this matter furthest and quickest under the circumstances? Is it Spark? Is it the agency? Do we have some kind of timeline on that? I don't mind deferring anything if people are not ready, agencies are not ready, and so on. Obviously, that's just the way it is. But I am a little bit confused as to who is going to do what, when, and how under this sort of general statement, which I'm happy to agree to.
The agency will provide the use case when they can, is basically what they've said. They've provided the statement, and that's in the text of the disposition in both boxes on the left and the right. So we've got the, I guess, the prerequisite for when do we actually get to consider this as our group. The remit for providing this content does sit with the agency because they are the organisation who is responsible for the national infrastructure, including the My Health record.
Of course, thank you.
No worries. And lastly, Dushi?
I was actually considering lowering my hand because Brett already said what I wanted to say, and that's to just suggest kind of an editorial change to the new proposed disposition to keep it in the context of the issue that's been raised, and that's to have the decision and some rationale for decision and the action. That's to defer. That was all I was going to say. Yes.
So let's edit this now so that we know exactly what we're voting on. Ricardo, do you want, would you, going back to the exact text that was provided, I think that we can either make a statement that you on behalf of the Australian Digital Agency has provided the following statement, and either refer to the comment or copy this into the disposition. I think those would be within our kind of our governance rules. Do you have a preference or an alternative suggestion?
Look, I'd be happy if you just reference to the comment so as you can see who's made the comment. I think you can say that I've made the comment on behalf of the agency and just point to.
Did I spell your name right?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, good. Now I need to just find the link to that comment. Which is here. Link. Okay. All right. So would anyone like to suggest either an alternative disposition, which is that we don't defer this until the agency can provide a proposal for how the patient summary is connected to the My Health record, or would like to suggest any changes to the wording that is on the screen now?
Hi, Danielle. Kenneth from Evolve. Can you hear me?
I can. You're really blurry, but I can hear you.
There is 1 second. I've got it. And
That's
sorry
better.
for late. sorry I joined late for one to start with, but we're actually looking at some cross-border flows and basically creating a summary to load into the My Health record. So from a survival's perspective, we don't want to delay this. We actually like to expedite it. So I think we need to think about what alternatives we have. So if we don't have a structured way to deal with this, we need some sort of interim step of how this might work.
Ricardo, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, look, I think that the main thing that I can say here, Kendall, is that there's currently work underway to modernize the national infrastructure and to enable the FHIR capabilities, and that's effectively a prerequisite for us to do anything in this space. And that's on that basis that we're suggesting that we might have to delay this use case definition until release 2 of the patient summary, because the national infrastructure is not ready yet.
Keeping in mind what we're talking about is delaying until the next release 3, not where
No.
release 2 is actually going to be. Well,
I disagree, Heath.
okay, delaying beyond release 2 because we're publishing in January.
It says deferred until the agency well, hang on,
Okay.
that's release 1. Hang on. Release 1 of
release
AU
1.
Patient Summary gets published in June 2026. This is deferring until the agency's in a position to provide this detail. If it turns out before we publish AU Patient Summary R1, the agency says, hang on, like maybe in January, we actually have this, let's talk about it now. Well, it's probably not enough time, but we could reopen it. Like this is a deferral until the agency is ready.
Yeah, so I guess the question here is, if that's purely around a FHIR structure of the AU summary, what is the alternative to use in lieu of that until that's finalised for future?
I think that's a conversation you have to have with the agency, because
I'm happy.
the TDG
I know I'm poking the bear
Yeah.
only because there's a burning need at the moment.
Yeah.
I have been talking with our partnerships team about this and this idea, but you know, we're ready to really kick into this at the moment.
Okay, I'm happy to take that one offline with you, Kendall. I think that if there's something you're thinking of doing, a book, I think there's also an aspect of discovery from our end where we still don't understand everyone's kind of workflows in detail. So if you have a view on how you probably intending on doing things, I'd probably like to talk to you, because I think that will also feed into the thinking we'll still have to do in this space.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, there's the technical work that's being done. This can happen in parallel to that. So
okay,
when the technical capability is up and running, we can quickly jump into the implementation of something using those capabilities. So happy to chat.
And that's sort of that, like I said, you know, happy that, you know, we're still, you know, working through what that looks like from a FHIR point of view, but, you know, there's other ways we want to do stuff now. So as I said, it's sort of what we want to build and what we can do now from a, you know, structural point of view. Do you just go down that current existing CDA route, which is not ideal from a, you know, time frame point of view, what's available, but then longer term, you know, what does this FHIR look like? I don't want to have to go back and read stuff twice.
Yeah, look, there's probably, I guess, one thing that I can say is that we're planning on implementing the AUPS FHIR specification within the national infrastructure. So I think that's you know, it's something I can say we want to do that. So I think along those lines, we can then talk about potentially how that might converge, you know, from a timelines perspective.
Yeah, timeline.
The work that you're trying to do, and just see where that leaves us at the end.
Okay, thank you.
So
again, sorry I was late.
No, that's fine. And just before we go to Brett, and I hope you're coming to the next Connectathon, Ricardo. I hope the agency is, because
we
the last
are.
one, the agency brought some early ideas on components on how the FHIR would work with AU Patient Summary that a whole number of people got to test against.
Yeah, and I think that we'll definitely be there. And look, I'm just pointing out that I think that what we're seeing currently is probably a bit more beyond the technical capability, which I think is relatively well understood. Is, you know, once you have something into the My Health record, the patient survey, what do you do with it? You know, how do you manage potentially the life cycle of that information that comes in? So I think there's all the things we need to still figure out. But I think the technical capability and accepting them is probably a relatively less complicated or more straightforward kind of decision.
Okay, Thank you. We'll take one quick comment for Brett before I ask for any more
Oh,
comments so that we can motion this and move on.
And keep it brief. But I mean, this committee is looking at the patient summary definition. We're supporting what the agency's doing. They're here, involved, and bringing things that they need in here, I hope. And you know, but I think we're not actually providing the national infrastructure or the all the things needed to achieve that. So, I mean, we probably just, this is like keeping on mission in the sense that we are going to deliver some usable specifications for patient summary, and then the agency can utilize those and feed into those as time goes on. And I think you know, I think we're not actually defining the whole health infrastructure here. We're just referring to it via this use case. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So I'll call again if there are any amendments to the proposed disposition for this JIRA. Hearing none, Ricardo, would you like to motion?
I motion that we approve the proposed disposition on the JIRA issue that's presented on the screen, which is number 53329.
Thank you, Ricardo. Who would like to second?
I will second, Doshi.
Thank you, Dushi. Any other comments or questions while I move to find the vote? Okay, I'm going to launch the vote for the current motion. Please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. You can also pop it in the chat if you can't see the vote, the electronic poll. All right, only 70% of people have voted. Just give it a little bit more. Okay, 80%. And I'm going to count this down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll. I'm going to share the results. With the vote in the chat, that comes to a total of 15 affirmative, 0 negative, and 8 abstain. The motion carries. I'll take this opportunity also to remind people that as I'm chairing this Zoom meeting, I get to see the actual numbers, but what is just shown to you is just the percentages. So that's how I'm able to read out the numbers. I'm not doing maths in my head. Okay, so we will note that that one is approved. Okay, let us go to the next item. And in fact, I think this one isn't critical. So I was going to raise this on this particular technical correction. We can postpone that, I think, to another meeting and instead move through into the ballot items. I think we now have the option of either going right. So here are the items that we can go through. Looking at the time available, I don't think we're going to get through all of them. There's an IPS meeting coming up, so it might be best that we actually focus on the IPS call items and leave the one that doesn't require reference back to the IPS project group. How do people feel about that suggestion? All right, I'm seeing a couple of thumbs up. So in that case, we will move through the bottom issues here, the no known procedures, no known immunization, no known medications, and this one down here on, I've got a Zoom window blocking that. Remove reference to IPS regarding note defining access. Those have all been referred to the IPS group as well. And so let's move on to those items. Now those are you, Heath. Did you want to start sharing your screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will stop sharing.
Just give me a second.
Great headshot photo, Heath.
Now you get to see the real me. Somehow.
You're not sharing video though. Are you just trying to say that that is the real you?
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to switch to it. Where is it? Okay, maybe I'll give up on that. Too many screens somehow. Okay, so I just wanted to introduce the concept of known X as we sort of refer to it. Basically in the IPS implementation guide there, it indicates that sections with entry resources may be used to assert the known absence of data rather than just using a section empty reason. Then it goes on and recommends to use the patterns established within the FHIR implementations to assert this known absence. And doesn't really go into too much details about what those are. It also recommends that SNOMED CT concepts for representing known absence of data are included in the profile's primary code binding. So as an example, allergy code, in immunizations, that's vaccine code. And effectively this concept of known X applies to the various sections in IPS, including allergies and intolerance, problems, medication summaries, immunizations, and history of procedures. So with that sort of background, there were a number of tickets that were raised against AUPS for each of a few, well, not for each of them, but for a few of those. So if I just go back a step, allergies and intolerances, we do have a well-known and already an approach to this in AU Core. And just correct me if I'm wrong there, Danielle, but there is a clear understanding of how we actually represent known allergies in AU Core with a code.
Yes.
We also have an existing approach for known problems in AU Core.
I should probably also further background there is AU Core's just adopted what's in the FHIR standard and like in US Core and IPS. So it's essentially the widely defined and implemented position on how you would represent that information.
Yeah, so that's second dot point when we're saying that there's using patterns established within FHIR implementations, that's what we're referring to. But then they do go on and talk about having these for medication summary, immunizations, and history of procedures, which is probably not so well known. So Danielle's raised a number of cards here, and because at the moment we do not have the idea of a known procedures in AU Core, and hence that does not ripple through into into the AUPS. So this card is actually considering the adoption of what IPS is alluding to, and what IPS does use is a code called known procedures, and we'll go into that a little bit more. But just to go back a step and say, okay, what is a procedure in FHIR terms? So FHIR defines a procedure as an action that is or was performed on or for a patient. The value set recommended by IPS is a set of procedures, but it also includes the term known procedures from SNOMED. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it is not a procedure. It does not come from the procedure hierarchy in SNOMED. It comes from a situation hierarchy in SNOMED, and some of its siblings are things like procedure started, awaiting transplant, etc. So it's not explicitly a procedure. It is a situation regarding a procedure. And I guess just to challenge this a little bit is, can we have an action of no known procedures? So just thinking about the original definition of a procedure and what we're trying to say when we actually put a code against a procedure resource of no known procedures. Effectively, we're saying that we want an action of no known procedure. There's some other considerations here as well, which is in a procedure, we have a status element. So what would the status of no known procedures be? Is it things like not done? Is it unknown, etc.? So we've got a few things like that that we need to consider. And what is the performed date time? So explicitly, the date here is performed. So if it's no known procedures, then what is the performed date time? I'm doing hand gestures here and I'm not on video, so sorry, I'm gesturing to myself. And finally, would an observation resource be more appropriate? So this is just really giving you some context around the complexity of this approach and for us to adopt this approach. Any questions so far?
I would just like to clarify, I didn't, in terms of my original issue, it's more of a, we need to consider, since we're going to be compliant to IPS, and IPS makes statements around how they would prefer this to be done. We need to consider this. I'm not actually, personally, I don't actually agree with it, and I can talk about why, but I think there's a lot of work to be done to consider how this kind of concept could be represented in FHIR. So I think I just more want to rephrase my issue that I raised, because this was me, that we need to consider whether or not this is something we can adopt, or if we think there should be something else done. And we need to ensure that we're engaging with IPS, because we are expected to be compliant with IPS and AU Core.
And in addition, what was alluded to previously by Ruben, there is this alignment, or we have, as a jurisdiction, we actually have to state how we vary from IPS if we do so. So this is actually quite critical from that perspective, from that governance perspective, that we're expected to comply with what that IPS because we derive from it. And if we don't, then we need to state why or how we don't and why. Neil?
I guess from an implementer's point of view, so if we had to implement this for these resources, then it would be a case of if we return empty, then we have to return one of these dummy resources just to indicate that there is none, rather than returning an empty bundle. Is that what's implied here?
So there's two ways from an implementation perspective, and keeping in mind what this concept is about. This is no known procedures. So it's an explicit statement of saying there are no known procedures. It is not that we don't have the information to state that. So when you don't have the information to state that there are no known procedures, then you use an empty reason. But if you explicitly have that, it's very similar to the no known medications one, which we will come out to before, but later, where some of the systems actually have a checkbox to say there are no current medications for the patient. This is that same explicit statement that we're talking about here. So there's a distinction between us knowing that they have no known procedures and a system that doesn't know that they don't have that they have no known procedures. Sorry about the knowingness here. It is always tricky to have these conversations.
But I guess from implementation perspective, that sorry, because we're a facade, that tick box to us is not an allergy record. It's just a tick box possibly in the UI. So I guess that's that's our concern, is that having to generate a FHIR resource possibly based on a tick box or
Yeah.
something. Yep.
So if you don't know anything about it, then you wouldn't use that approach. So it comes back to this dot point here. If a system wants to assert the known absence of the data rather than using the empty reason. So that's the situation we're talking about here. If the system does have a means to assert known absence of data.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Always helps when I got a scenario going, so to recognize when that applies. And I guess what, after that conversation, it got to the point where I go into, there's an encounter, and then they have a discussion, but nothing needs to be done, and the encounter is over. But before he gets a chance to put anything into the system, he has to run off some emergency. And so the record, as far as the software is concerned, what to do with it. I guess that's the only thing I can think of for not knowing the reason why you have no reason.
No, I don't. Well, sort of, but I don't think that's actually what this is meant to be. So if a patient has never had a procedure, so it's like no history of procedures, this is actually more meant to be, I know we've got a SNOMED code here, but the concept is really meant to be like no current medications, patient has no allergies, there's no history of immunization, there's no history of procedures, and sharing that rather than talking about the reason I haven't actually captured the data. It is actually a clinical statement with an author and a date making some actual assertion. It's not
Okay, thanks
emptiness.
for pointing that out. Yeah, okay.
Yep. So think about it as a paper form and you're filling out the form to go to hospital. What is your procedure history? I've had an actual explicit statement in that to say I have had no operations in the past. Right.
Yeah, that's good leading, because I think the semantics here are something that is confusing and needs to be sorted out at international in a lot of ways, because I think what you just said, Heath, like saying I have no procedures that are actually important is different than saying I have no known procedures. Because there are plenty of procedures that go on in, say, in a GP clinic that are minor things that you record as procedures, and so technically you do have procedures, but when you ask that question, I know you really don't mean that. So I think the semantics there are a little bit fuzzy, and misuse and inconsistency in those semantics is there. So, and I think the international needs to sort that out, because I think it's a real problem. Yeah,
it's a real good point, Brett, and I think that's another one of these other considerations is the expressive or the explicit, like the scope of that term. And I think in previous conversations we talked about these as surgical procedures, no history of surgical procedures, so that we exclude those diagnostic procedures, for example.
Cool.
Yoni?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with the concept that there is an implementation and a clinical question. This one is definitely appears to refer to clinical question in mind, being that if you say to me, you have had no procedures, not no known procedures, but no procedures, it is implied that you have not had any, as you mentioned, most of the time you would discuss a surgical intervention of a significant kind. No known procedures is something that I will put as an empty box when I either haven't had a chance to ask the patient, or I don't have the patient in front of me, or for whatever reason, it is not information that is available either to the patient or myself or anyone else that can fill it. And in which case, if I say no known procedures, that implies that there is no other data to be offered, or something else that you can address, like time and so on. I think the issue here is, as mentioned, there are other procedures, maybe minor sort of toenail procedures in the GP clinic. How are they going to be recorded if there is an MBS code attached to them? And that is a difficult one to answer, especially when you put it in a patient summary. I'm not quite sure I have a solution for that.
Thanks, Yoni. Well, they're really good comments that I think are all coming to, I think everyone's kind of actually leaning towards this consider for future use. We'll go to Mandy and then come back to talk around this disposition before we will need to time box this discussion.
Just a quick note. We have surgical procedures, we have radiology procedures like as MRI, where people might have implants that might be a flag. There are, as you guys mentioned, clinical procedures like vac dressings, kind of towards surgical or non-surgical. If you guys want to put that as a known procedure, it can get lost in the translation. So being more specific with the codes or rectifying those other elements at the other section and having this in as a final might be helpful. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Mandy. We'll capture those comments in the minutes.
So yeah, basically this is the reason or the rationale for the proposed disposition of consider for future use. So the rationale is the history of procedures is not mandatory section. There are significant set of considerations, including resource selection, usage of status, perform date, and all of the things that we've talked about there around the specificity of the code. And basically, as a result, AUPS Release 1 will not include this no known procedure code as a part of the value set. Now, currently the binding on AUPS code is the NCTS procedure value set. It is not the IPS procedures value set. And that the AUPS documents, if we did as a result of that decision at this point in time, if we do receive an AUPS document that does include that procedure in the code, it won't be invalid. It will be allowed because the binding on that NCTS procedure is extensible. So there's nothing too controversial about it too much. If someone does provide that, it'll be okay. We obviously need to be able to handle it, but that is, we will go down this route a little bit further. As an extensible binding, it's allowable, but we won't explicitly include it in our current value set that's bound to that profile.
Thanks, Heath. I'm really going to have to call time on this one. I think, Brett, final comments.
Final comment is I would like to make a motion that we accept this disposition and go ahead to consider this in a future discussion.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Brett and a second from Heath. Would anyone like to make any other comments or have some questions before we vote on basically deferring this issue?
Just Danielle, I don't have a raise hand icon in Zoom, so I just want to ask a question. So are we going to come back to visit the value set? And I mean, I know that the no known procedure code from SNOMED is a semantically ambiguous concept, and that's my understanding of what the issues that we're taking of. And are we going to come back at some point in time to discuss what values should we include, or future use? Is that something that we kind of push way further down, and we'll come to it when we have time, that kind of situation? Do we have a timeline as to how to address this issue?
So I just added and my next point here is that as an action, we will go back to patient care working group, which you know very well, Stephen, and to basically ask them to provide additional guidance and examples on how to support this IPS recommended approach.
Okay, thank you. I'll
think
raise it
there
at the patient care work group as well.
also needs to be an action to consult with the clinical community within Australia, so through the CDG, on what is really intended as well, because I am hearing that ambiguities are around what is actually being captured. So I think both of those things would be necessary. So I would suggest that, I mean, this doesn't have a specific date on it. So this is we're not going to finish solving this by R1. That's really what this disposition is, but it doesn't mean that we don't continue working on it. And there's already some actions underway, I think, to try to slow burn that.
And I'll come back to that in a couple of slides, hopefully.
Would anyone else like to make any other comments or have questions? All right, I'm going to launch the poll for the current motion, which you can see on screen in the slides. And yes, please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. Okay, we've got 70% of people have voted. Just waiting for a few more people to vote. Does anyone need to ask a question to help them vote? Those of you who aren't voting at this point? All right, I'm going to count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll. I will share the results. With the vote in the chat, that is 16 affirmative, 0 negative, 4 abstain. We will be deferring completion of this issue from R1 of AU Patient Summary. Thank you, everyone. On to the next and very similar topic.
Yeah, so that was good that we had that discussion because
Actually, Heath, I'll just give you we'll need to time box this to 10 minutes if we can.
Sure. Okay, so similar rationale here. Basically, as a definition, immunization describes the event of a patient being administered a vaccine or a record of a vaccine as reported by the patient, clinician, or another party. The IPS recommends a value set that not only includes a set of immunizations or vaccine codes, it also includes this known immunizations code from SNOMED, which again is not a vaccine product in SNOMED. And I guess challenging the idea, can you have an event of no known immunizations? Further complication here is the way that no known immunizations is defined in SNOMED is that it is actually a child of no known procedures. And in the way that SNOMED works with its inferencing and ISA hierarchies is that a no known immunization code implies that there are no known procedures. I'll let that one sink in a little bit, but that becomes a real problem.
Heath, I don't think that is a problem in the sense that to start with, immunization, the concept is incorrect anyway. So the concept should be vaccination. One can never guarantee from a clinical sense that any vaccination will be zero converted into immunization status. So in this particular case, if we just not hone on the concept of immunization is related to any vaccine product, and we consider that as a vaccination procedure. So known immunization as a situation is not such a bad thing in terms of applying to the immunization section, where you're saying that I do not know of any vaccination procedure that has ever been performed. So as I said previously, the situation concept is not semantically precise, but it's actually not that bad. It's workable in that sense. We shouldn't be considering that the known immunization should be referring to a vaccine product. It should be referring to the vaccination as a procedure.
I'm struggling a little bit, but I probably don't want to get hung up on it at the moment. But basically what I'm taking from that is that this is broken. Still, that I think what you said is that the known immunization is probably not the right concept to be used here anyway. I think I heard that.
Well, in the context of vaccination versus immunization, yes, but I'm also saying that the section itself, the naming convention, is actually immunization. So if you want to align with the section name, then known immunization is not such a bad idea.
Except that it also implies that there are no known procedures through inferencing of SNOMED, which is what I was trying to outline here. But maybe if we can just move on from that topic, because it was more the fact that there is some question around, is that the right code and does it have the right meaning? And what does it actually mean in the context of procedures as well? Yoni.
In context of the time limitation, I'll just say that as a clinician, this will be very confusing. And I agree with you, Heath.
Similarly, there's some other considerations, status again, current date, and again, it's just coming back to should there be the use of an observation instead of the immunization resource. So lots to consider again.
Then we have Brett and then Kendall.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a terminology problem here. And the immunization resource itself is a little tricky because it's a procedure and a medication at the same time. So it's I think that needs discussion and sorting as well at the top level. So it's because we need something that represents the idea fully. And yeah, I don't think we can just go with it now.
I'm just going to put the actions up there as well as this disposition. So just so that you can consume that while Kendall's.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I think the question here is we should have a not known is probably the better option here, because the thing is, we're assuming that people have, but if you have overseas people, I think the wording is, as Brett said, there's a problem with this.
Well, actually, it's the opposite of that. This is a knownness of no immunization. So it's not known. It is actually known to be no.
Or is it better to say not stated? Is maybe so I was thinking. Sorry.
Well, they're stating this. This is the assertion of no known immunizations.
All right. But it says it's linked to okay.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
It's a mess. I guess let's put it. So maybe let's flip it for a second. If you're a paramedic going to someone who's on the side of the road, you find out who they are, you got no clue. So I think we need to flip it on a little bit from a technical point of view to more of a clinical aspect. I think as Stephen's saying, that's probably my recommendation.
And hence,
totally agree.
Why we're basically proposing a disposition of consider for future use, because yes, I've got some actions down the bottom, but immunizations is not a mandatory section again. And what we mean by that is that you don't need to provide. It is not mandatory, so you don't actually have to provide this section. So you can say nothing at this point in time. There are a significant set of considerations. Again, selection of resource, status, meaning of the date, meaning of the code, and hence we would like to defer this to later release. And as a result of that, we will not add the no known immunization to the Australian Medicines Terminology Vaccine Value Set for this AMT vaccine code in this profile. But what that does mean is that if we receive an AUPS document, or if someone produces an AUPS document that includes that immunization code of no known immunization, this will not be valid because it is actually a required binding. against that Australian Medicines Terminology vaccine. So unlike the procedures where it's extensible, this one is required and hence will mean it will be an invalid AUPS if that code is used.
Thanks. Final comments from Mandy before I think we need to, there's been a number of comments from the group that are all leading towards saying that this isn't something that we can solve in R1 of AU Patient Summary, and there needs to be work done, both the technical community and the clinical community.
I agree. And the only thing that comes to my mind is a high alert of a known allergy in case of a breakthrough, or in case of a patient might be infectious, and that might be something that the clinical team need to comment. That's the only thing that comes to my mind from the ambulance services, where they have got no idea of the immunity of the patient.
Thank you, Mandy.
So I would like to motion this disposition as displayed on the screen.
Happy to second. Yoni.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Heath, a second from Yoni. Any other comments or questions while we move to the vote? Okay, I will relaunch that poll. Okay, you should see that in front of you. Please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain.
Just while that's finishing off, you'll notice that the second dot point here, we're going to add this to the section future candidate requirements for consideration. That's an existing section that's just talking about the future of AUPS. And so we're going to add this, and we'll probably do the same thing for the previous one as well, for the procedures, just to state that this is ongoing work.
Okay, I'm going to count that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll. Now the chat went off. So did someone vote in the chat?
Ricardo.
Ricardo, did you vote for this in the chat? Is Ricardo still online?
Yeah, I was trying to find my unmute button. Yeah, I did.
Okay, so was that affirmative?
Yeah, that's affirmative.
Okay, so with the vote in the chat, that is 16 affirmative, 0 negative, 4 abstain. That motion is carried. We will defer this from R1 and continue on the actions on the slow burn to try to address these considerations. And we have 10 minutes left. Heath, do you want to just do a quick socialization of the other two issues that are going to be coming through to the IPS call on October 29th? Because I don't think we have time to actually go through and reach a decision on those.
Sure. Just again, reiterate the polls that we had. So we're still looking for some feedback around the known current medication implementations in FHIR. So if you can perhaps, if you have this concept of known medications or known current medications, please go there. It's a similar scenario around known medications. They are not only recommending the use of medication, this code in medication requests. They're also looking at it being used in medication statement. So both medication requests and medication statement are allowed in the medication summary section. You can use known medications in both of those places. You can also use known medications in the medication code that you reference from one of these medication statements or medication requests. So it gets even more complicated. And we were going to put forward a disposition around restraining this within AUPS to look at medication statement only for the use of that no known current medication. Sorry, that's the wrong. Yes, for known medications code. And we are going to basically, that's what we would like to do with our UPS, but we don't have time today. We're going to take this back to the IPS project group at our call that we have on the 29th of October. So you can see this is the agenda we've put up at the moment. We're actually going to discuss all of these, but no known medications is the first one we're going to address. There is also another JIRA ticket, which is about removing the reference to the IPS regarding not defining access. So there's a section in AUPS about localization where we state that our IPS do not define access to IPSs. And I raised a ticket around this, that in fact the IPS does define access through its recommendation of dollar summary and doc ref operations in its capability statement, so that we should remove that. But then there's some contention around, well, is those operations actually access capabilities, or are they just generation capabilities? So again, that's the other topic that we're looking to raise in this IPS project team and AU discussion on the morning of the 29th of October.
Okay, yep, perfect. You whipped through that nice and quickly, and I think we probably have to leave it there, because as soon as we start going down the rabbit hole, we'll go down the rabbit hole. So again, come along if you want to hear what's going on and what the IPS project team can add into the discussion on why is this in IPS, how is it being used in international, and what do we need to consider on these issues. That's what we're going to be doing on that Wednesday, 29th of October call. So, yep, please come along if you're interested.
And
all right.
Having some clinical input would be awesome.
It would, yes. Now, I think you need to stop sharing so I can wrap up this meeting and, okay. And your camera's working.
Oh, it's been working for a while.
Ah, there you go. I was obviously too busy doing other things. Let's go back to the screen. Okie dokie, let's finish this off. Okay, so that's the slide you were on here. What's next? So our very next call, which happens after the IPS meeting, besides the usual business, we're going to do the report back from the IPS project and then come back and discuss the two that we didn't get to today. We'll also actually give a report back on what's happened on those other items. But we're going to try to move to a decision on these two. Maybe for no known medications, we'll get to a position that is, let's do something. But we might also end up saying, no, this also needs to be deferred. If we get through that, we need to actually go through our AFMM1, because once we've completed a ballot reconciliation, and these are the last two items, we need to confirm the assessment that the artifacts in the AU Patient Summary FHIR IG can move from a draft status to being accepted by us as being appropriate to start testing with. And then we'll go into AFMM1 if we agree. Are there any other items that people want to add on to the agenda for the next call? All right. Intergalactic Patient Summary. That's true. There's a space one coming. Here are our meetings. So we've gone through today. We've made a bunch of decisions, which is fantastic. There's the common issues one, if you're interested, that's probably a little bit more boring than the stuff we're going to be talking about in the IPS call on the 29th. And then we'll bring it back to this 31st, so in a fortnight's time on a Friday, before we go into the TDG face-to-face workshop, where there's going to be a backlog pitches for AUCORA 3, and then a whole number of patient summary workshops will be going on there. I think that's that for today. Are there any other things that people want to comment or question on before we wrap up the meeting? All right. Oh, Kim, go for it. No, sorry, you didn't mean to have your hand up. Okay. Thanks everyone today, and especially thanks to the clinical representatives who could come along and really add some meaningful set of things that we need to consider if we're actually going to be working through those items. I think that was really critical. So it's great that we're going to be able to have that in the minutes for when we take that forwards. Mandy.
Sorry, I don't meant to be recorded, but please correct me if I'm wrong, but vaccination and immunization are two different things in clinical setting. You can be vaccinated 20 years ago, but not be immunized. One of the things is tetanus, for example. So I don't know if it is a procedure thing, but immunization is different than vaccination, if that makes sense. I mean, that's how I believe. Just my 2 cents.
I don't think so. Sorry, can I say?
Please go.
Vaccination, immunization, they refer to the procedure. You are either immune or you're not. So you've either got immunity still, or you might have waning immunity. That would be a different thing, which you could only tell by serology. So that would come in pathology results.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
What exactly I said earlier. Vaccination doesn't guarantee immunization.
And that's what I was just asking Stephen if you could hold on, because just given your comment there as well, I'd actually like to try and clarify that a little bit. But that's what I'm deriving from what you're saying as well.
Yeah, vaccination does not equal immunity.
Yeah.
Not immunization is a thing that you do.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, my wording. But yeah, I completely concur with both of you. Just to clarify that from my end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. That is always good to have in the minutes, and I think that's something that people get because the topics are so similar and the words are so similar that comes up just about every time we talk about it. So it's good to have that set of concepts just reaffirmed for everyone in their mind. All right, so I might close the meeting here. And again, thanks everyone for your time today. I think that was a really valuable meeting.
Yeah, thanks very much. See you.
Thanks, Daniel.
So off the record, Stephen, are you
Hang on,
basically
I'm still
saying...
recording.
Okay.
If you want it off the record.
Yeah, off the record.